like this. In general, I think we're living in times where when you come in as a leader and say, I've done this, I know exactly how this goes. I've done this for 20 years. Don't tell me how I should do my job, kind of thing. You know what I mean? That is a very dangerous position because very quickly there's some other company that overtakes you on the left side, and then that's and it starts with a mindset. So I'm looking for a curious mindset for somebody who is asking questions instead of telling me how this works, right?
All right. A good day. And it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Jan Urbahn to our chat this afternoon. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon. My pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So I know we're in for awesome conversation together, because I know you have been in some very awesome leadership roles in a very interesting industry. So I just and I know you also face some leadership, some challenging periods, right, through all of your experience. So I wanted to
Certainly.
get us started with just asking about kind of what are some of the biggest challenges that you see in a fast growth, high pressure environment with respect to leadership development?
Well, there's many of challenges.
Yes,
I
fair.
think personally, maybe start with that. Leadership for me starts with leading myself. Leading myself starts with health, most importantly. And so my experience is, especially in the last 15 years, work has accelerated so much with the modern tools, and now especially with AI as a companion besides myself to complete the work, that you just have to have more mental presence and also physical fitness to really live a leadership position nowadays. And you can see it. I mean, when you look around, a lot of people, a lot of leaders are now paying attention to their fitness, probably more than 10 years ago. So that is certainly one of the biggest challenges to integrate that into a busy schedule already that you have working, because obviously fitness takes time. So we can talk about this later. Then certainly the next challenge is, to stay up to date with, what is happening out there. I think my personal perception is that, the speed of innovation is like 3 months. I need to be updating my procedures every 3 months to stay up to date and make use of the tools that are available. And that was certainly not the case 10 years ago. And then certainly in terms of management is, obviously delegation is always a challenge as a leader, where you wonder, what is the work that I take on, and what is the work that I can assign to the team. And now, obviously, we have AI as a tool on the side, and the question is, how do I make use of that? And so that certainly adds to the complexity at the workplace. And I think that's a good mix of challenges. So we can.
I was gonna say that was a very good mix of the big ones you right off the top. But I honestly, I just want to comment. Like I love your starts with self and personal fitness and physical and mental fitness. And I like how you bring it up as like the key to success, right? Personal in order to survive, but also with the challenges and even some of the ones you brought up afterwards. It's also even almost harder today than it has been in the past.
Yes.
Yes. So it's one of those like more important than ever, harder than ever to tackle. So I like how you gave it number one slot.
And I give you one example. I had a conversation last week with an attorney, and my question to them was, how do you integrate AI? And they said, we don't use AI because, as you know, you can't. Because of, there's plenty of reports about that in legal, you have to use correct references and da 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 da. And I said, that's not my perception. You can, if you get a contract or something like that, then put it in Copilot and ask a question, what's wrong with this? And give me 10 ideas to improve this, And then I have in 2 minutes, I said to the attorney, I have in 2 minutes, I have a whole bunch of ideas, and I can say, follow number 3, number 7. And that means, if I could, work on 2 issues now, a year ago, now I can work on 5, maybe even on 10 on a busy day. And I just have to have the stamina to keep up with the machine,
Yes.
And that is that is an issue because it's just much more data going through my head. My tool, so I started many years ago with meditation. I tried a lot of different ways of meditation. So for example, I like Buddhist meditation. They have a breathing technique, but I need to be in a quiet room for that, and it's something I can't do every day. So my go-to tool is transcendental meditation. And that's a silent mantra based meditation. I can do this. I've done this on the New York subway,
Mm.
and it really increases the coherence among the certain parts in the brain. And I often realize that in the next 2 or 3 hours after meditation, I can certainly do things that I can't do later on in the day.
Yeah, I like that.
It opens my power hour.
Yes, and I mean, that's been proven over and over again, right? So you only
Hmm.
have to go, you don't even have to spend too much time finding out why it's so powerful.
Hmm.
You choose to trust it, trust the research, right? And go down
Yeah.
that path. I like that you opened up a great tip there. So I like
Hmm.
to think of that as well as a toolkit. We have a toolkit of ways to keep up with the busy days. So some days
Yes.
you get to do your deep
Hmm.
meditation, right? That you can create space for that and benefit.
Yeah.
But other days you can still be a person who meditates and gives themselves that break, even on a busy New York subway. It just
Yes.
looks completely different. And that's a really
Yeah.
good, that's one of the key things to highlight, I think, is that we don't have to be stuck in has to be this way, that all or
Hmm.
nothing thinking, which I know is very human. And we can challenge that with just okay, I have this crazy busy day. How can
Yeah.
the self-care habits look today? Not
Hmm.
just like, I don't have time for it and then move on and let that become a pattern for self.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I prioritize that. It's really something, and even if it's just 10 minutes, but before my important meeting, do a 5 or 10 minute meditation, and that will make a huge difference.
Yeah. I can just concur with all of this. And, from
Hmm.
personal experience as a VP of tech, this is what took
Great.
me down a path of realizing, trusting taking on some of these habits based on
Hmm.
just understanding the research is telling us, feeling like I don't have time for them. But then
Hmm.
seeing how that actually my performance increased with the upgrade,
Hmm.
even though I was giving this time. It was so
Hmm.
life changing that here I am spearheading this scaling this at organizations today because I couldn't
Yeah.
unsee the power of it once I saw you're sharing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what yours, which I really love to hear. So, but I wanted to talk to you about that.
Hmm.
I like I benefit I shared I was down this road myself as
Hmm.
a executive on a burnout path, and I was able to pull myself out, but I also had
Hmm.
significant resources, and that's what I
Hmm.
know that happens kind of in that executive layer of organizations.
Hmm.
And I become kind of obsessed with how can we scale that beyond, because of course you need executives and top management to be at their best, but so do
Hmm.
you really need the middle layers and the entry layers as well for
Yep.
performance and for development of the pipeline.
Of
So
course.
that's been, a key challenge that I've been
Hmm.
tackling. And I just wonder if I could ask you for your thoughts on, how do we, scale some of this, some of these, and I like to call them performance habits or sustainable performance habits beyond
Yep.
the top layer that usually gets some of the resources.
So I think my best advice is lead by example. My observation is that everybody's looking at the leaders, what they do.
Mhm.
Employees try to follow and you know s- uh,
Yeah.
kind of copy behavior of the successful people at the workplace. And my experience was I saw it once. I had a period where I switched to bananas in the at breakfast,
Mhm.
and then suddenly other people brought bananas to the morning.
Nice.
And this is when I realized that you have as a leader also an example, lead by example function.
Yes.
And so that would be my first advice. Then, of course, I think it's always good to have web-based platform like a tool where you can just go
Yes.
and so that everybody. I mean, you find a lot on YouTube nowadays, so it's not as important as it used to be. But something that is sanctioned and curated by the company, certainly that would be good to have that available. And then often, like the health portals, have something too, or a teledoctor that you can call if you have some questions. that's usually very, very helpful too. And my advice would be to everyone, make use of these options. There's plenty of information, and find out what is good for you. So just in general, as a guideline, I tried to understand health for a very long time, and I honestly didn't get it. And I just tried to understand what is the one best way to live a healthy life. And finally, I understood many years ago that everybody's different.
Yes.
What works for you is maybe not the best for me. You just have to figure out what is best for you. So there's some people who thrive on grains, other people, don't operate very well on grains. Just give it a try and then stick to it.
Yeah, and I would also add, that's what works for you, and then also
Hmm.
this phase of life as well. And I know that that's
Yeah.
something I also personally relate to, as ex-varsity
Hmm.
athlete. It looked certainly very different in my 20s, early 30s, and then
Yeah.
now, in my mid 40s, I've had to do a
Yes.
significant adjustment to what it looks
Yes.
like. And so all of this boils down to really we have to give it some intention. We have to give it some
Yes.
effort. It will not happen by
Hmm.
itself or by accident, likely not. But I like that you're talking about using the tools to your advantage. And another key tip there is like finding a way that works for you now
Hmm.
is like, yeah.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. On the flip side of what works well, have you, and I know you have a rich career in consulting and working with different organizations and even globally. So I just want to ask you, is there on the flip side, is there, things you've seen companies make a mistake with? So that could either, not only not be effective, but sometimes actually backfire. I wonder if you have any examples or thoughts on that.
So I've worked at two companies where lunch is ordered into the office.
Mm.
Personally, in hindsight, I am not a fan of that. During that period, in both periods, I gained weight. And
Too much, too much good lunch.
bottom Well, the bottom line is, as we just said, there are certain ingredients in foods that work for me and certain
Mm.
ingredients that don't work for me. And if lunch is ordered, that's a nice benefit, but I don't control what I eat. It's as that's the bottom line. And so that is something to just have at least awareness about, that, maybe you can negotiate with the coordinator who is ordering the
Mhm.
food, a certain diet, maybe say you are, keto or vegetarian or pescatarian or, meat only or something like that, whatever works for you. And so that is certainly something. In what I also realize, even more as I also age, is that sleep is just important. 20 years ago, it was easier to burn the midnight oil. I'm not a big fan of all of these energy drinks, and I don't want to name any products, but you know what they are. And so for me, it is more important now to stick to a certain sleeping schedule. I try to make lights out at 10 p.m. And whatever happens after that, that is for the next day. And my experience is it works. Obviously, sometimes I just had something urgent, for example, this week, and I needed to do something at 2 a.m. because it was in a different time zone. And exceptions are always there, but in general, I try to put everything aside by 10.
That's really great advice. I love that advice as well. Again, it comes back to those habits, right? Of sleep, nourishment, movement, hydration, those are base, and I like to call them back to basics.
Yes.
And sleep is a good one. I started sharing about how, sometimes people, you get asked about, oh, what's made you so great at your job or something. I was like, oh, I noticed a
Hmm.
real spike in improvement. Actually, I was like, and for me, it's even fixing sleep. Then
Hmm.
working as a working mom of two boys, I was like, I went further. It'd be like, it took me fixing the family routine to
Hmm.
get me to be able to go to bed at 10 o'clock. So
Yes.
yes, so that's there's work again, lots of work required, paid off hugely, not just
Hmm.
for well-being, but for productivity and performance at work as well.
Hmm.
I love that you're highlighting some of these things. That's awesome.
And I think you said something very important. Yeah, and I want to emphasize that
Yes.
back to basics.
Back to basics.
I realize that many of us are looking always for the next trick and the
Yes.
next gadget and the next supplement.
Yeah.
It's really and it's really the other side. Back to basics. Get some
Mhm,
sleep. Do 30 minutes exercise. Get some
mhm.
meditation in. Eat well, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. I've adopted that. I love that you highlighted that as well. Actually, and I started sharing too as kind of exactly as the world has gotten more and more complex and fast,
Hmm.
and it will just continue to be so by every indication
Hmm.
that we have. It's
Yes.
just actually almost being focused daily on the
Hmm.
basic of the habits has almost
Hmm.
become a competitive advantage, in fact.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can kind of boil down some of the stuff we're saying because in the world, it's easy to get caught in all of that. It
Hmm.
actually takes strength to root yourself in these
Yes.
human principles first, right? And then
Yes.
show up, open-eyed,
Hmm.
ready to go to take on the
Yeah.
challenge of the new tools and the learnings that have to keep happening.
Exactly. That's
And
my
the fact that
experience.
you do have to balance basically 5 clients versus 2, etcetera,
Hmm.
nowadays, then just because that demands it and we're able to, um,
Hmm.
almost yeah. So I love that we're on the same page with that. I love it. It's my personal mantra, and at the heart of I live performance, so that's amazing.
Hmm.
I was also gonna ask you a little bit on what I thought from your, understanding your background. You're obviously work with really technical teams and also
Hmm.
with close to safety standards and
Yeah.
safety. So in those situations, it's not just even about wellness and productivity. It's a safety concern, right? And it's very technical, and you're dealing with technical people naturally. You notice a difference with how they approach those types of people approach this, or how to find ways for this to resonate with them, in a very technical kind of highly complex environment like that.
So my experience is, I mean, obviously everyone has to make their own decisions. That's always
Mhm,
my standpoint. And I can offer a certain menu. So what I do is,
mhm,
in a certain situation, I had a coworker who was in a, certainly challenging situation at work. And I said, why don't you try meditation? You can go to the course, and if you don't like it, they will refund your money, and
mhm,
there's no risk.
mhm,
And the coworker stayed with it.
mhm.
And was very happy about it afterwards. So I think there's just little things you can suggest as a leader. I mean, everybody can take it or leave it. But I think my observation is, as you talk about safety, certainly awareness is higher today at the workplace than years ago.
Yes.
And I remember, for example, going to a different location, a company location, and suddenly everybody was on low carb diet. So they were, everybody had lost 10 or 20 pounds, and I hadn't been there for a couple of weeks, and the first pounds go very quickly, and
Mhm, yeah.
I said, "Wow, what happened?" And so that might be also one. But don't be shy at work to just suggest it. I think it's absolutely okay to just say, "Hey, I wanna watch my diet a little bit, and can I have do you guys wanna be my accountability partner?" And it's much easier to do this in a team than trying to do this on your own, right?
And that's important to talk about as well. I think it's like, first knowing what your needs are, figuring them, knowing what the
Hmm.
habits are, figuring out how they work for you. And now you
Hmm.
mentioned a couple of times also speaking up freely at work to let others know,
Yeah.
adjusting the lunch order openly or asking for accountability. Because frankly, we're spending so much time at work. There's no
Yeah.
room to pretend to be something else than what we really need or that we talk about. So I
Yeah.
like that openness and not being afraid to ask, and that's always helpful for people to hear, because sometimes, again, it's very human of us to think we are the only ones suffering and everybody has it figured out, where through these conversations, 100% it's like not the case. We are all thinking about this and we all have our challenges. It just might be in different areas.
Yeah. I mean, the worst seriously is to watch a colleague struggle,
Mhm.
and yeah, so it starts with these basics, and it always works when you go back to the basics.
So I know you work with different and new companies all the time,
Hmm.
and so that you have the privilege of coming in with
Hmm.
this, really great critical thinking about this subject matter top of mind. Is there signs that you look for when you start working that either red flags or good practices, so that you can kind of push or pull, depending accordingly to get the right conversations going. When you're starting somewhere new, what are the first things you kind of look for to be helpful?
So first of all are the conversations with other leaders, obviously,
Mhm.
and I always pay attention if they ask the right questions. In general, I want to put it like this. In general, I think we are living in times where when you come in as a leader, and say, I've done this, I know exactly how this goes. I've done this for 20 years. Don't tell me how I should do my job, kind of thing. You know what I mean? That is a very dangerous position, because very quickly there's some other company that overtakes you on the left side, and then that's and it starts with a mindset. So I'm looking for a curious mindset, for somebody who is asking questions instead of telling me how this works, right? And I try to do the same thing. I was once told, by a mentor, you have one mouth and two ears. Use them proportionally, but it's still good advice,
Yes.
especially today. Then I'm also looking at the pace that the company has. There are companies, that are asking for to have this presented in this work package in next week. There are companies that ask for it tomorrow, and there are companies who ask for it in 2 hours. And obviously, if you break down work into smaller work packages and have a higher number of iterations, then you can even faster correct that. So work on in the morning, work on something, talk about it over lunch. But maybe you even need to adjust because you found something out that you didn't know in the morning, right? So if your next meeting is tomorrow or next Monday, that will slow you down. And so I think it's very important
Yes.
to look at speed, and that's a
Yes.
critical feature today.
I will use the opportunity to underscore. I absolutely also, after, with my personal and research, the pace is key.
Hmm.
So, and, I think
Yeah.
about pace at that organizational level, like you were saying, the
Hmm.
leader set the tone for what's being demanded. There's a pace
Hmm.
for team flow, like how team operates, and there's
Hmm.
individual pace as well, as I think.
Hmm.
And actually, it's such a tricky concept, pace. There's
Yeah.
a famous quote. I think it's often attributed to Bill Gates, but I think it's also rooted in some others saying that how for humans we actually have a tendency to overestimate what we can
Hmm.
do in a day, but underestimate what we can do in a year.
Yes.
Which I deeply believe in. Like it's like um,
Yes.
we can't always trust our human gauge on that pace, and it's actually so much of it is it's really important to strike that balance again at those different levels of the organization, and it has to kind
Hmm.
of click together to get into that sustainable performance flow. So I love that you brought up pace as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just thinking about this is all super well helpful. I get super aligned with how we think about it. One of the things I know when we talk to organizations about this, we get a lot of questions about is how do we measure impact of some of these investments? So we know
Hmm.
we talked here a lot. Leaders have a big role in it. Organizations also can provide platforms, wellness resources, benefits, etc. So of course that takes investment, and especially when we're again scaling it across the
Yeah.
organization. So I just wondering if from your experience, have you seen some interesting data on measuring the return on investment and the impact these things have on retention, performance, productivity, etc.?
I think the indicators are the same. They stay the same. What is your retention rate?
Right.
You know, how many employees are missing work? What's your sick rate? These the parameters don't really change. And more importantly, I think it's a conversation, among with your peers. Talk to other directors and ask them for observations. Is the team engaged? I mean, you don't need to look at the dashboard, right?
Mhm.
If the team is not engaged.
Yeah, and
If,
I
if
like
you
that.
have a project, if
Mhm.
you have a project and there was no progress in 8 weeks, then probably there's a lack of engagement.
And another good reminder. Like this part has to be looked at just with same
Hmm.
kind of scrutiny that we look at some of the other investments we make in the company, right? Like it's like,
Hmm.
and that's one of the things that we're highlighting now, though, is like
Hmm.
because there is investments are going up and up and up, but also the numbers globally, and not speaking about any specific company, globally, the numbers for disengagement are at an all-time high and rising. So that's just
Yeah.
one of the things that we like to highlight is just that this would not fly with any other
Hmm.
other investments organizations are making. So it's really important to be eyes wide open with what's happening today, what are we doing about it, and where we're getting back out of it as well, so that it actually is a fit with the challenges of the workforce today.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I'm a fan of return to office. So I think there is a certain benefit of coming to the office, interacting in person
Mhm,
versus digital tools.
mhm,
It's just different if you sit in the same room and you can actually observe somebody's body language, for example.
mhm.
Even if you're not aware about it, you're still making use of it. And so I'm a big fan of at least 3 days of 5 RTO.
Well, it's always good to hear it from me, from somebody who's on the cutting edge of technology and working with, AI firms, to still be always talking about the human touch, observations, conversations, the human needs. I also always like to underline that in these conversations. Like, that stuff is not going away, to our to the benefit of all of us. So I like that you're talking about that as well.
I just watched a video of a PMI, the Project Management Institute, and they emphasized again that project work is people work.
Mhm.
The technology will take care of
Yes,
itself. If we want to fly to Mars, we can do that, but people is always
always.
um, the ultimate factor, and to
Yes.
make that work.
People, and maybe I would add now data. That's the other one I throw in for the
Yeah,
AI concern, yeah, which always comes back to people and management as well.
eventually, yes, yeah.
Eventually, yes, perfect. Well, this has been such a good conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity to pick your brain on this really important subject. And I just wanted, in closing, I wanted to ask you if you had anything else you wanted to share with our audience on the subject matter or in general.
Maybe just as a summary, I would just encourage, if you're looking for improving your health, go back to the basics, look at meditation, just try different diets, stick to something that works for you, and very importantly, do 30 minutes exercise. 30 minutes walking is absolutely sufficient. You don't have to go to the
Yeah.
gym, or and do something for your intellect. Read a book, and maybe 5 or 10 minutes every day. And I emphasize reading. It's leaders are always readers. So and that's pretty much all. And be just open for picking something up. The future will certainly bring new things. The best thing is to be open and ask yourself once in a while, what can I improve?
The growth and curiosity mindset, right? Along with a
Hmm.
healthy body, that puts us in the best shape to handle the demands and the changes that are coming our way. That's a really important mindset. And as you said, we're asking people to do things differently, but at the root of that is that mindset
Yes.
can change. And that's really, really, that's a really powerful message to end our discussion on today.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Jan. It was
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure to talk to you. Always, of course, it's so nice to talk to somebody so like-minded on the subject matter. And we really appreciate your input.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. Have a good
Yes,
day.
of course. Yes, you too.